welcome back to The Prize, the podcast emanating from wonderful Northeast Minneapolis with your host, Danny Sigelman. Back here for episode number 3, wrapping up 2019 with one of my favorite people, drummer Dave King. I'll be talking to in a bit here. And Dave, back in town for a stint of shows at the Dakota, as he's been with the Bad Plus. Now 20 years of playing the holidays at the Dakota, starting on Christmas Day. They're playing 4 nights, 2 shows a night for the Bad Plus. It's been a tradition of mine to try to catch as many of them as I can, but especially on Christmas night at the Dakota. So excited to have the Bad Plus back in town, and I was excited to catch up with Dave, and we had a really great conversation. And speaking of the Dakota, I spent some time there and in working at the club and putting on shows, and always a treat to witness saxophonist Irv Williams, who just passed away this weekend at age 100. Irv Williams, originally from Arkansas, spent most of his playing career in the Twin Cities as a saxophonist, and retired many times and always came back. We used to have Irv play at the Dakota every Friday for happy hour, and that became a regular gig for years. Irv, and usually he'd have a trio, would do the happy hour, and people would come and catch up with Irv and see how he sounded. And I just remember always hearing the run of melodies that he'd go through to warm up for sound check in that gig every week. And once I heard that sound, I knew it was kind of almost the end of my work week, and it was always a joy to know that Irv was back with us again to play another set. And you really get to witness how a performer for that many years works on from the muscle memory of their heart as much as their fingers with the horn, and I think that always came through in Irv's playing up until he passed away this weekend. So cheers to Irv Williams. I'm definitely, there's a drink on the menu at the Dakota called Mr. Smooth, which was Irv's nickname, and tip one of those to Irv when I go see the Bad Plus. Yeah, I think I first saw Dave King, God, so many years ago, playing drums with a band called Brea Valentine. I remember seeing them at the old Red Sea one year. I think it was Cedar Fest in that era, and walking in and seeing this drummer just very maniacal on the drums and the jagged rhythms that band was all about. Dave was just perfect for injecting that sort of pulse and rhythm behind the vocalist Wendy Lewis's singing style. And I remember seeing, I think there was a period of time Dave, like any good drummer, goes through a lawnmower blade phase, and he had these stacked lawnmower blades mounted on cymbal stands as another voice in the rhythm. And he's definitely somebody I always kept an eye on with his band Happy Apple, and several offshoots of that group. Legendary performances in the Clown Lounge at the Turf Club and all over town. Getting to anytime you could catch a Dave King performance was a joy, and he really took off with the group The Bad Plus, who have been around now for about 20 years, and I've gone through a lineup change recently, and that's been noted as a new era for the band, which Dave is really excited about. And we talked about that a little bit with the new pianist Orrin Evans, who's been in the band for a couple years now, along with long-standing bassist Reed Anderson, who has been a friend of Dave's for many years. Wrapping up a really busy year overall for Dave with several projects. He's been touring with Joshua Redman and appeared on a record from one of my favorite guitar players, Julian Lage, and some of Dave's other projects, such as Broken Shadows and Golden Valley Is Now. And how does Dave keep it all together? We find out in episode number 3 of The Prize.
Okay.
So where are you right now?
I just got home. I was out for most of the fall, actually. It was one of the longest kind of. I was only home about 8 days between mid-September and 2 days ago. Way too much, actually. I have never really done that before. I've got my daughter's in college now. I got to pay for that shit, Danny. Can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No, I get it, and God, man, I was just kind of looking at what you've been doing the last couple months in this year, and I know these are all recorded at different times, but how many records would you say you're on this year? I think I counted about 4. That were released this year.
Might even be a few more. I have to think about the actual 2019. I mean, it was one of those things where for a lot of years, I had been asked to do things kind of outside my main groups, and I didn't really have any time because I was just so busy with like the Bad Plus and Happy Apple and like my trucking company band and just things that I lead. That I would only do certain things, like with old friends like Reed and Craig Caborn.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would get asked to do things every now and again that I kind of want to do, but I wasn't able to carve out the time. My children were younger, and just being able to be home as much as I possibly could and also still pay the bills was really, obviously really important. Mm-hmm. But in the last 2 years, since my kids are so much older, I started to kind of say yes to some things. That I was like, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to do that, and I think I can, push it and try to, to get all these things in. Mm-hmm. And artistically, that's wonderful, but the reality of it is it's sort of almost really burned me out physically. So when we count on my records wave, it's more like, in the last few years, just taking on, like, now playing with Julian Lage and doing his last record, and then doing his next record coming up here, and then also I replaced Brian Blade in Josh Redman's Still Dreaming band.
Yeah.
I was out with them all year, all summer, and I've got stuff coming up with them again in February and May,
mm-hmm.
and then possibly doing the next record for him on that. So that was a whole undertaking of learning all that music.
Yeah.
And not only that, but also just a certain amount of pressure replacing Brian Blade in a band is not easy. So,
right.
That's not the easy thing mentally to think about.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, just on top of all that, making sure the bus is on point and getting our new record recorded and getting it out on this new, getting a new label deal with Edition Records in the UK. So I don't know. Then Golden Valley is now this new thing with Craig and Reed. I just, it's one of those things where I haven't taken a second to think about.
And Broken
what
Shadows.
records are out there right now. And so this fall, they all kind of converged on me, and I've been gone. And it's kind of burned me out, actually.
No, I know. And I imagine it kind of manifests itself in a lot of different ways. There's kind of the casual ideas, and then there's the things you really want to pursue, and then there's the practicality of being in certain places at certain times. I guess
exactly.
So, what my main question is like, number one, how do you remember all this material? And then number two, when do you sleep? And how do you sleep?
Honestly, Danny, it was hitting me this fall, jumping between things, and finishing the summer with Josh and having to learn that whole book of music, which is like 25 tunes that he just rattles off, a bunch of half originals and half of like New Dreams music and Ornette music, and I knew a lot of that music, but learning a lot of the original music of that band, the Still Dreaming band. I spent the summer kind of trying to do that, and then in between that, kind of prepping for the new Bad Plus record and writing and doing all that, and then the Golden Valley Now project and getting all that music in a row. I think a lot of it is just jumping back and forth, is just trying to maintain the mental space to be at the highest level I can be at, and I don't know if I was able to. There were times on this fall, like I told you, my head was just like, not to be dramatic, but it was one of the first times ever I had reached a certain mental block point.
Yeah.
And on a couple shows, my hands were not doing what my brain was saying to do, and that kind of alarmed me.
Yeah. Yeah, that
And
is.
so I don't know. I mean, I was jumping back and forth. The Julian stuff is really specific, Julian's concept, and so, and then of course I wanted, want to be 100% for the Bad Plus all the time, and that band is such a machine live that it's like, it's almost like the Minutemen. I mean, if you've seen, I know you've seen the Bad Plus, it's just like the next song is now,
Yeah.
And so a couple times I was just like, oh my God, I'm maxed.
So like, and maybe it's a personal question, but do you meditate? Like, how do you kind of manage your mental state?
I don't actively meditate, but I do. I mean, sleeping is the key issue, of course, and that's probably every touring musician's number one, conflict.
Yeah.
Is fatigue and making sure there's any time to sleep. I remember Tim Burns. Well, I was with Tim on tour like about 10 years ago, and we were doing a master class somewhere. I think it was like Switzerland or something, and somebody asked him like, "What is the number one thing you can tell a young musician? Just one piece of advice." And I remember he said, "Learn how to sleep standing up." I loved that answer.
Yeah.
Because it's so real. It's like you sleep when it's like gorilla sleeping. It's
yeah,
like, okay, I have 10 minutes in the airport.
You get every little minute you can. I lived in China for a minute, and that was a really common theme. Wherever you'd go, you'd see people kind of sleeping for like 30 seconds or a minute. And I remember one time I saw a guy on a motorcycle at a stoplight, and he was like sleeping during the red light, and then as soon as it turned green, he somehow woke up and then drove off.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I wish I could do that.
Well, I think there's a way. I think it becomes a custom in a culture, and I think maybe that's something we're lacking. I was always a big fan of Batman, and that was kind of Batman's thing too. He could like train himself to get the energy he needed from little spurts of sleep whenever he, wasn't.
It's the happiest way to be napping. I mean, anytime you're in Spain. Anytime you're in Italy, especially Spain, though, and you're in Mediterranean cultures, and the siesta is so real that you start to realize, oh, that's why they eat dinner at 11 o'clock at night. It's because they all take 3-hour naps in the afternoon, It's it seems like a pretty healthy concept,
Yeah, maybe you could do a whole concept album about that phenomena. Just like, you put the needle on, and the first minute of the record is just like, the Bad Plus sleeping.
Exactly. John Page, but
I think maybe a little meditation for you might be kind of these homecoming shows every year. I mean, you kind of always know the tradition, and certainly it's probably a time where you can like see people that you have a long, close relationship with, and that kind of thing. I mean, would you kind of is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, I mean, it would be. It's always a super welcome year-end, kind of tradition that I get to be here. Number one, multiple nights.
Mm-hmm.
Because we play a lot of multiple night engagements in New York, and those guys are home then. But this is kind of like the fact that I get to be in my own place when we do these multiple night, 2 shows a night, and it's our 20th year doing it.
Yeah.
This year, so I mean, every year. But then again. You balance that with some of the pressures of the fact that many people, you want to see many people, and you want to make sure people can, either relatives can see the shows, or so again, all those things have their own conflicts and pressures.
Yeah.
That it's like, oh yeah, but you can never really put 100% guard down. Everyone's kind of hectic around the holidays. I've got to like play on Christmas night, and it's obviously when we do this music, it's music that demands a certain amount of concentration and technical agenda.
Yeah.
And so you're not just like, oh, it's a party and we're all hanging. It's more like, here we go. We're gonna play this dense, complicated music, and everyone's had a fun Christmas afternoon, and now we're like, okay, get to work. And so it's you know what I mean. It's just the classic balance of. I love doing the Dakota shows, and we all do, and it's a huge, beautiful experience that people keep coming out. And all I know is that every year we try our best to make sure we're throwing down a high level, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the benefit of knowing that you're going to be in your own bed is probably the most you get out of it. That's a little different from being on the road.
Absolutely, and that is, and like I said, that's wonderful. I mean, it's like, now that we're not doing the year-end Vanguard, because we did that for almost 10 years, so we would go directly to New York after the run at Christmas. I'm so happy about that. Last year was the first year we hadn't done the Vanguard for that particular week. We've been doing different weeks of the Vanguard now.
Yeah.
We kind of, with the end of Ethan's tenure, we decided, like, the Vanguard talked to us, and everyone was kind of on the same page of, like, let's switch up that tradition and just do regular Vanguard weeks like we had forever.
Yeah.
And, let that be something that we had a tradition with Ethan, so that was last year, the first year I didn't have to hustle right out of Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt amazing. I mean, I'm not a New Year's Eve guy, so the fact that I've had to play New Year's Eve for almost 10 years at the Vanguard, it's not like it's a non-pressure situation where you're just playing a bunch of standards and you're just kind of laughing and having champagne. I mean, freaking Village Vanguard, there was no lighthearted New Year's Eve vibe,
Right. So you're not doing that
last year I got to just hide,
Yeah, so this year you're going to be at home for New Year's.
I am. All I'm doing is after the Dakota, I'm just flying to LA to play one show with Jeff Parker. And then I come back on the speaking of just doing some things on the side.
Yeah.
Because I also spent the fall touring with Broken Shadows. The group I have with Tim Byrne and Chris P. Reed. So we actually played the Ice House at the end of our U.S. tour.
Yeah.
In September.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I was out with them a bunch too. So it's one of those things where, I'm going to be home New Year's this year, and again hiding and wonderful, probably asleep before 10.
Yeah, and I'm sure your family, maybe that's a unique thing for your family.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
You're definitely reclaiming moments for yourself and maybe your life outside of like your job or your music. I saw Jeff recently with here's a cat I want to get your perspective on. I saw him with Micaiah McCraven. He did the Walker gig recently. You must be pretty hip to him. Have you known him have you met him before?
I've met Micaiah, yep. I met him outside a hotel in Copenhagen on the opening night of the Still Dreaming tour this summer. Yeah. We were on the same festival in Copenhagen, and it was nice. I met him. I mean, he's about at least 10 years younger than me, and he was really sweet. He talked about how the Bad Plus These Are the Vistas really kind of affected him. It was like reverent, nice conversation we had.
Really sweet.
I can profess I have not spent much time with his music, so I don't know. I don't have an outright opinion about his music that I could share, even though I would. I have not actually gotten a chance to spend. I think I've heard like a snippet of something.
Yeah.
And I do know several of the guys some of the guys he works with in Chicago, and some other people. I know them a little bit, but it's something I definitely is on my list to check out more.
Yeah,
but he's a sweet cat for sure.
Then you might not know the answer to my question. I was wondering why he had his cell phone on his snare drum the whole time. I thought that was really weird.
A couple things he could have been doing right off the bat. He could have been just muting it. I've actually done that. He could also be doing, who knows, he could be recording something that he's playing and then somehow holding the phone up. I do, this summer when I was out with Josh, I realized that Josh has a cell phone on stage. I realized he's timing the shows and recording a lot of them with his phone. So I mean, I was kind of worried for him because I thought he was going to accidentally hit it at some point. But then I thought, maybe that's part of his practice is that he makes sure not to, like he really restricts his zone where he's playing his snare. Well, I use a little tiny. I have a very small wallet, and I use my wallet to use the snare drum a lot. So,
yeah, because you don't want to sit
come
on
on
your
out
wall.
to the Dakota, Danny. You can watch me. That's a great way to plug the show. See if I put my wallet on my snare.
And
play around.
Do you have like one of those like? Do you have like an old school like Velcro like wallet?
No, I don't. I wish. It's a small little tiny one. It's a tiny little non-cash wallet, I think.
Yeah, what do you usually carry around with you? I mean, you travel the world all the time. What do you carry around with you? You got a credit card? You got an ID?
Yeah, I got my YMCA membership card. I got some mileage airline cards. I got I've got a credit card that has very little room on it. I've got a passport.
Do you know all the do you know like all the tricks at the airport? Like, are you kind of one of those guys that kind of you can like really effectively maneuver yourself, in crowds and getting from A to B?
Yeah, I definitely know some tricks. I am a diamond medallion Delta member and a million miler. Nice. So, I mean, the juice that I have on Delta is real, Danny.
Yeah. Can you give us any tips?
Out on Delta, yeah, would be treated well. Everywhere else, I've got nothing.
Yeah. and are you hauling drums with you wherever you travel, or are those usually you show up and they're there for you?
Yeah, I don't travel with drums.
Yeah.
That we have like a rider that specifies a very highly specific, simple but highly specific drum and head situation. But I travel with cymbals.
Right.
So the specs of my drums and the heads that are supposed to be there are typically there as part of the contract of. But at the Dakota, I bring my own kit, of course, and I have a kit in New York.
Yeah.
As well, so I will use my own personal drums in New York and Minneapolis, but other than that, no, never.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like as far as traveling with all that. I mean, how are you? Yeah.
I mean, it's just boring to talk about, really, but at the same time, it's just sort of like surviving the airport is a huge part of the downside of being able to play your music for people, which is such a dream.
Yeah.
That you have to very earnestly feel incredibly grateful to get to play, non-commercial music, instrumental music for people as a job. It's amazing. And then, the old cliche though, that you're really being paid for the travel. I would do the shows for free. Everyone would.
Right. And go ahead.
It's just hard. It's a hard travel. I mean, we just spent almost 3 weeks in Europe, and we were in a different country almost every day. So, I mean, that's normal. There's 14 countries, and zigzagging around. It's a long day.
Yeah, and I guess all this other stuff is kind of what I get fascinated by, all the kind of like the minutia of the experience.
Right.
But as long as we're talking about drums, I kind of wanted to bring up a topic. I wonder what you think about. There's kind of a little boom, at least in the Twin Cities, of like craft drum makers.
Okay.
Much in the way there's kind of craft breweries, it kind of feels like there's a lot of people in town that kind of build their own drums. And
oh, wow.
I think in a way I could kind of credit your notoriety for popularizing drums. And is that true? I mean, has that always been the case that there's like, you have the Twin Cities Drum Collective, you have like Clash Drums, you have... there's probably others that you maybe know more about, at least in the Midwest, of kind of that tradition.
Well, I don't know about Clash as far as if they make their own drums. I don't know. I did a clinic there once. They're really nice people there.
Yeah.
The Twin City Drum Collective, those guys definitely, they kind of rose from the ashes of Ellis drums, as you probably know.
Yeah.
Tim Ellis kind of disappeared. His company, which I actually loosely endorsed for many years, loosely meaning that it was the reality when you go with a smaller company is they're not going to have a kit of that name for you all over the country every night. Right. So I typically will play like a Yamaha or a Gretsch kit when I'm on the road.
Yeah.
But what I can control is my visibility in Minneapolis and New York, because those are places where I would, play more shows during the year than say San Francisco or whatever. And so the company that the drum set that I end up calling my own is the 651 brand, which is from the Twin Cities Drum Collective. They have a couple different drum builders or companies or whatever within that umbrella. I actually don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
But Lane Henderson is a pal of mine.
Yeah.
The drummer of Dillinger 4, and he's been a huge advocate of relaunching that entire thing. He came on to Ellis near the end and really tried to reboost it. So I kind of went back with Ellis, and so I like supporting the small drum companies, and I like the sort of small batchy kind of vibe of a drum set. And big companies can be really impersonal, and then they can just sort of, whatever, even though there's some incredible drums being made by all the big companies. And so I just kind of did that. So I don't really know, though, about if there's other makers. I mean, of course, there's Scott McPherson at Tackle doing all of the kind of extra doodads and cymbal bags and stick bags, and he's amazing, and his stuff is amazing. You actually see that stuff appearing all over the world. I mean, Tackle has major fans in the kind of artisanal stick bag world.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to call it,
no,
but I love his stuff, and he's a beautiful person as well. He's a super cool guy. All these guys are so cool, the Twin Cities Drum Collective people, they're incredibly sweet, cool people.
Yeah.
Lane is an awesome guy.
And I think in a way, I guess what I meant about the overall phenomena that includes Clash to a degree is just kind of the interest in vintage drums and kind of repurposing drums and all the collective aspect of being a drummer and a musician, and I think drummers kind of have that in the Twin Cities.
Oh, I think so too. A good point to think about is, and this is pointed out to me a lot by other instrumentalists all over the world and in New York and in everything, is that drummers seem to have a community energy that is unique to that instrument.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because it's an instrument that's so important but doesn't get the same accolades as, say, if you're in jazz, a saxophone player or a pianist. You're not offered leadership positions that much. In fact, that's one of the positives of some of all of the juice that's been thrown at Micaiah McCraven over the last few years, is the idea of drummer-led bands, which of course I'm a part of very equal democratic band situations, and some people might think that I lead Happy Apple, and all these other things. It's I think that's an interesting thing with drummers. It feels to me like drummers are in each other's corner. I don't sense the same level of competitiveness that I sense with different instruments.
Yeah.
And it's really something that other instrumentalists talk about. Like, I've heard guitar players and bass players and things talk about how drummers seem like they're in each other's corner. Drummers are all friends, and they just got this nerdy community that they nerd out on, vintage this and what cymbals are you using. Everyone's looking at each other's gear all the time, and it feels less threatening than it is. We all know there's competitive nature in any form of the arts. It's no different from anything in the corporate world or in capitalism or anything. There's a competitive undercurrent in the arts, and I just have noticed a nice, brotherhood, sisterhood in drumming.
Yeah.
That is really, like you probably have noticed yourself. There is something there,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've played drums, most of my life, and I kind of go in and out of the practice. And since I've kind of been drumming a lot more lately, I guess I'm a little more in tune with that, and that's really true. Those guys do an event that I go to whenever I can. It's the Twin Cities guys. Lane is like the host of Drum Karaoke. Do you know about that?
I have heard about it, but I was on the road during most of the times they've done it, but he keeps me abreast of what's happening, and I've heard I need to check that out.
I did a Kiss tune, and
incredible.
And then I think I did a Prince song one time. What would you do at Drum Karaoke?
So the whole point is that you play drums along with a song?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they have tracks minus the drums. You just kind of play along to the record, but you're hearing the record and the monitors, and everybody's hearing an even mix of everything. So
oh my God, that sounds so fun. That sounds awesome.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have to think about.
Yeah,
think about what I would do well.
There's nothing that pops into your head. Maybe I don't know. Who was your favorite drummer when you started playing? Like, who was kind of like your go-to guy?
In jazz, it was Elvin Jones.
Of course.
Was the first that really, Elvin Jones and Jack DeJohnette really.
Sure.
In fact, one of the highlights of my year this year was glancing at my Instagram, which is the only social media I do, but I don't do it very often. I just kind of promote some shows here and there and put something out there. But I glanced at my Instagram and it said that Jack DeJohnette started following you, and I actually took a screenshot of that. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, in this world of like people are contactable, at least Jack DeJohnette knows I exist.
Yeah.
I've met him a couple times, so I actually understood why. But I felt it was just kind of fun to see. It's fun when you get to run into some of your heroes out there, but it's also kind of an abstract situation when you see that Jack DeJohnette actually started following me on Instagram. I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean that's
anyway.
That's like the modern. It's a modern phenomena that you can enjoy.
Exactly.
I think sometimes
exactly right.
Social media gets a bad name, and it's those little things that wouldn't have happened otherwise that give you a little.
Yeah, exactly. It's hilarious. When would that have happened?
You are listening to The Prize podcast, hosted by Danny Sigelman, episode 3 with Dave King, talking drums, talking drumming, talking the Bad Plus. Always fun to catch up with Dave, and we will continue that conversation in a moment. Want to make sure you keep track of The Prize on social media. The Prize MPLS on Twitter. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Paper Sleeves on Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, if you're just catching up with us here on this episode, make sure you check out the Prize Podcast episode with number 1 with Adam DeGrosse, photographer extraordinaire, and also episode number 2, the Halloween special with filmmakers Roman Cimienti and Tyler Jensen and their film Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. That was a lot of fun. Got a lot of great comments about that, and hopefully you're enjoying this episode of The Prize as well.
But in rock, I really loved a lot of the classic fantastic rock drummers who I still think are haven't been touched, which are people like John Bonham and Stuart Copeland. I mean, all the classic kind of like very idiosyncratic people that were really changed the course of the way that those groups sounded. People like Neil Peart, Bill Bruford, and the prog rock guys. Phil Collins was always one of my favorite drummers. I think he's still very, very brilliant.
Yeah.
And within the drum community, everybody knows, maybe people don't really realize outside the drum community how heavy Phil Collins was as a drummer.
Oh, yeah.
But, if you go back and listen to Genesis and you listen to something, I mean, it's some of the most grooving and also odd and progressive drumming ever recorded.
And these were like the first drummers that you probably paid attention to, right?
Yeah. And then I got into like I said though, like almost immediately started listening to some jazz stuff, and I just remember some of my early jazz experiences, which were when I was about 12 or 13. Other than listening to big band records of my dad, was hearing John Coltrane's My Favorite Things, and it's like it's not a unheard of thing to all of a sudden be face to face with hearing that and just going, whoa, that opened the door for me, and of course that's Elvin, and so I just I really kind of bit down hard on that thing, and it still maintains a very special space for me. And of course, it's not a unique thing to call Elvin Jones a great hero, but still to this day, I will turn to some of those Coltrane Quartet records, and and still fall in love with why I wanted to do this, you know.
Yeah. God, I mean,
fall in love with it. But you know, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, he was just so rock solid, but then his vibe was kind of all over the place. Like there was an off-kilter quality that really complemented John's horn and just the overall balance. I mean, he's just a maniac, you know.
Oh yeah, he's just a force of nature, and then also it's very, very, very uniquely, like the word idiosyncratic has to be in there. It's mysterious.
Yeah.
You know, and you go back and you listen, and there's a mysterious quality to how he was doing some of those things, where those different limbs were in different spheres of the beat. And John Bonham had that, you know, where you really hear the beat is somehow wider for him than it is for others, you know, and it's probably not been equaled in hard, you know, heavy-hitting rock drumming. And, you know, someone like that, like Charlie Watts, is someone where you go back and listen, and you hear the natural swing and undulating feel in some of those Stones records. And so, I mean, Jim Keltner, I mean, if I started listening all, you know, of course, and I loved the soul drums, I loved Earl Palmer, and, you know, I mean, all of the classic Subfield and all these other things. You know, I just anyone who felt like, to me, there was a personality there. It didn't have to do with busyness. It didn't have to do with technical achievements, even though I got turned on by that. You know, hearing Rush the first time, it was like, I'm 12 years old. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things where all of it goes into the pile of just trying to find the individuals out there and be inspired by people who took chances to be an individual.
Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of hear a lot of all those folks, and I was just listening to the latest Bad Plus record, and yeah, you get crazy with the ghost notes, and I always wonder if Dave King ever plays like a straight beat, you know, like.
I most certainly do, Danny.
Yeah, well, I mean, I get it though. I mean, your language is kind of like defining the beat by playing around it. I wonder I wonder how you think of, like, if you were in an elevator and you had to describe to somebody the way you play drums, what do you tell them? Is that a thing? Have you ever had to explain that?
I would say that if I had to explain what I'm trying to do or a style that I have, I mean, because I most certainly have played very straight ahead music, and I'm on some rock recordings where I'm not playing a bunch of insanity, and you know, I mean, I like simple playing as well as very complex and busy and stuff as well. I like minimalism and I like maximalism equally. But I will say that I guess I'm trying to you know, combine the idea that all of this to me is a song. So any form I'm playing, I want to you know, put forward that it's a song that I'm trying to make happen, not a drum you know, a drum explosion, and then there's just some melodic notes around it, and the drums are really the thing. For me, no matter how complicated or busy or whatever, always, to me, I'm trying to service what the agenda is with the piece of music at hand.
Yeah.
You know, and so, like, the first song on the new Bad Plus record, for instance, is a tune called, what is it called? It's called A Veil. And it's really a cycling of chords where it's so obvious that it's just a drum go for it. Like, it's like Tony Williams' Lifetime or something. It's just like the drums have got to come out of the gate, and it's just got to just be a drum thing. Because it's the cycling of this chord progression, there is no actual melodic material that you would call a traditional melodic moment. It's just rewrote this cycling of these beautiful chords, and we just kind of looked at each other and went, this is a drum feature. You just got to go. And we thought, how cool to throw this first thing out of the gate on this new record 20 years into this band. It's just like going for it, you know. It's just this cycle of going for it. So again, like, that's busyness and complexity in the service of what the actual agenda of the song is. And so I just think that if I have to tell anyone how I approach anything, I always am trying to think of a way to enhance the music with some sort of personality, and at the same time get across, you know, an agenda that that the rhythm can either be implied or you can just play it all. You know, it's, to me, you can imply the busyness or you can actually do the busyness.
Yeah,
And from song to song, I try to just, you know, take on that challenge as far as conceptually.
Yeah, I like that. I like the. I think saying you imply the busyness is would be the elevator speech. And at the
there you go.
in there, you know, there was a song. Was it Slow Reactors? I mean, that is kind of more of a steady, straight groove on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be a great example.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff in the Bad Plus. And the classic thing of you and I, you know, knowing that both you and I mean, I know you, you know, we're friends. I know that you listen to a lot of different music, and so do I. And
Yeah.
so, you know, in the jazz world, sometimes in the jazz world, in the modern jazz world, if you just play the simplest conclusion, even though it fits the song perfectly, you can take some shit for that.
Yeah.
It's like by some really square thinking, boxed in thinking jazz people.
Right.
Where it's like, why aren't you macking out and playing over the bar, and why aren't you playing all the information? I think honestly we're in a renaissance of jazz right now, and at the same time I think we're in a technical overabundance, playing too much information renaissance as well.
Yeah.
And I think that if everyone pulled back, if you want me to just lambast the entire scene, if everyone pulled back 15 to 20% of the actual information being played and implied a little bit more of it, and had a little bit more space here and there, a little bit less like full-on math agendas, full-on how do we subdivide this to the millionth note.
Yeah.
I just feel like the mystery can return to this music, because I think one of the great parts of improvising, one of the great parts of jazz and jazz history of all forms, is the mysterious human quotient that lies within the music and lies within improvising and lies within, you know, people, all these parts being put together in a very loose fashion.
Yeah.
And I just think sometimes it's like there's too much being played.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't mean, you know what I mean? I don't mean overplaying, because I mean, I've overplayed, I've underplayed and overplayed a million times.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that it's more like the conceptual nature of, it's all accents and 16th notes and 32nd notes, and we're just going to keep playing every single accent, and the drummers are playing every single part of the melodic material and chordal material. There's no space, there's no mystery. It's like it's all there. It's 32nd note accent, or it's a 16th note accent, or it's it's all odd time, but your accent to 16th note offbeats and the blah, blah. It's sort of like, what happened to the maybe don't play it?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's.
And I just think we're in a renaissance of maybe understanding. You know, like when a straight ahead record starts to sound like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Maybe we start to realize, like, oh, maybe it's being pushed a little bit. It's being maxed out, maybe a little bit right now.
Yeah, and it's all about the balance, and not just within the a record or a song, but also in the performance. And
that's correct.
I think you, especially the Bad Plus, has always maintained that pretty well. You know, I was going to circle back to the band. I think the last time you and I talked was maybe a couple years ago, and it was around the time you released, you know, Never Stop 2, had been recorded, and it was some of the last shows with Ethan. Now you've been with Oren for a couple years, and haven't, you know, the new record with him, and obviously he's really found a home. I mean, how have people responded, and I guess he maybe even had played with you even before that time. What's the vibe of the Bad Plus?
Oh, well, the response has been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
So in a way, I mean, we kind of pulled off, I suppose, what AC/DC pulled off, you know, when they pushed their lead singer, and it just went, you know, it went even more. I think that the response the world over, I mean, we've been on the road internationally for a few years now with Oren, and the connection is very galvanized. I mean, we have a nice time together. Of course, we've known Oren a long time, so again, there was this comfort zone that was there, that might not have been able to be available to us if we would have just gone on the road of, like, we're going to audition a bunch of great pianists and we'll just pick somebody and then we're going to get a vibe going. It's more like Oren just kind of slotted in And in a way, you have to give it up to how much he stepped up to do this, because it's not an easy thing to go in and replace the pianist in a piano trio.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like when Sammy Hagar replaced David Lee Roth.
Exactly. It's something that's very difficult to do, even though we knew the repertoire would be there for people to connect to, because Reed and I, wrote the bulk of the original book.
Yeah.
Her record, if you look at all of the originals, which is mostly what Bad Plus has always done, is original music, and so it's like, if you look at that, if you count it up, it's Reed. Reed has the largest amount of the music, and then I have the second amount of the original music. Yeah. That doesn't diminish any of Ethan's contributions, but it's more like, well, conceptually, the band kind of has a footing in what we sound like. So if we bring in this guy who we know is an incredible pianist, but also a unique musician. He's not just a great pianist; he's also a very unique conceptualist. He has a lot of ideas, and he's always been kind of an outsider art guy. And he's a sweet person and really intelligent. Really like high level artistic intelligence. Yeah. And so it's sort of like, man, we have a chance here, and to continue this language, because we didn't want to, let it go. We thought it's a very special thing in jazz to have a band and a non-leader situation. And then we got a chance to prove our entire point, which was the pianist doesn't lead the Bad Plus.
Yeah.
As much as people want there to be a leader in jazz, and as much as people want there to be someone you could call, the leader, and it's always the pianist or the saxophonist or whatever. We fought against that from note one, and Ethan fought against that with us.
Yeah.
And so, to his credit, because he never led the band and never formed the band. Actually, I formed the band and named the band. And so, it's one of those things where it's like, with Oren, it slotted in, and we just went out, and we knew we had to prove doubting promoters wrong, and we had to make sure the fans of this music felt like we were honoring the past of this music and also pushing it someplace forward, someplace new. And I think humbly, we've done that. And we really worked hard to make a very strong record right out of the gate, which was Never Stop 2.
Yep.
And then this follow-up, Activated Infinity, I think is a really strong album, and it's, again, another conceptual vehicle. We wanted it to sound kind of like an old Ahmad Jamal record. We recorded it in one evening, and with a very light sound to it, and we're just pushing forward.
And now the band has, almost its own history of material with him, with these two records. Do you stick to a lot of that material live, or do you dip back before Oren was in the band and play some of those songs? I know, were there kind of like re-records on this of a couple of the tunes that you'd done in the past? Yeah, there were a couple of re-records, which we had thought to do on Never Stop 2, and we ended up doing. I mean, we do dip back. The sets are always mixed of older music before Oren and the music with Oren and some of his pieces as well. Yeah. So, we always play some of the old stuff that we love. He knows several. I think he knows upwards of 30 of the old pieces that he chose. A lot of the time he chose. We kind of put it in his lap to kind of choose things that he really loves. Because one of the great things about Oren as well is that for us, it was that Oren was a fan of the Bad Plus. Oren would come and see us, and he was actually one of our trumpeters, if you will, within the music community. Yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah, he was I never played Philly I barely ever played Philly where Oren wasn't there. Right. Talking to me, and he and Reed go very way back. They're very good, close, old friends. Reed was in his wedding in the early '90s. They played a ton together and did several records together. So, I mean, it's one of those things where the shows are a mixture of a lot of new music and old classics, if you will. But and that's how we've done it since the get-go with him. We just gave him the opportunity to pick what he wants to connect to, and from there build on the sets and just work up a whole new book of original music. Yeah, I'm stoked to see you guys again. I only caught one of the shows last year, so that was the first time I'd seen him. You guys ever think of doing a Bad Plus show here, more in the summertime, or maybe mixing that element up of when you play in the Twin Cities, or adding to
We definitely have. I mean, we have in the past, I mean, we've definitely in the past we've done non-holiday appearances. You know, we played the Guthrie a couple of times, the old Guthrie and the new Guthrie.
Yeah.
And we played Dead Man Concert Hall. We played the Twin Cities Jazz Festival with Josh Redman about 5 years ago. It's all based on the opportunity. Like when we played the Rite of Spring, for instance.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I remember that.
Loring Theater 2 nights.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all based on what opportunity and the right timing. You know, you definitely don't want to mess with the period around the Dakota.
Yeah.
But definitely summer appearances or late spring appearances are definitely something we always consider. It's just whether or not it lands in the right space, and we're always open to it. Though.
I thought it'd be cool to see you at the Dakota more, in like during the summertime, and then have you come, play there more than one time every year. But you guys are pretty stretched out as it is. Well, I just wanted to wrap up. I ran into Dwayne recently. Your dad. How's he doing?
He seems like he's doing okay. I mean, I have to catch up with him this week, but just because I just got home. But I know he's always on the scene. I mean, he sees the orchestra regularly, and he's almost a cult figure in those worlds.
Oh my God! Yeah, no. So I often bartend at Northrop Auditorium, and there was an event. It was a fundraiser event, and I think he's maybe been a part of the crew of people that are supportive of the Northrop, and he was really working the room, man. He was chatting everybody up, and then he recognized me, and I was like, "Hey, Dwayne, it's been a minute. How you been?" He's like, "I think I can get Dave a gig here." He's like, "What do you think, man? The Bad Plus at Northrop?" And oh, that would be so cool. So yeah, he's always been a big supporter, and I had him. I had one of those little pictures of him that says, he's got the tape over his mouth or whatever. And I had him sign that for me.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. He's on the scene in the art scene in Twin Cities. I mean, the cool thing about what he's done is I watched him make a transition into really understanding and knowing the sort of more progressive music scene, like avant-garde jazz or jazz in general. When I was growing up, you listened to a ton of music. I was always music there, like classical music and some jazz, but and a lot of 50s rock and roll, because he's actually a really great dancer. I mean, he's 80 years old now, but he used to dance like 1950s style swing dance or whatever. Yeah. And he was really amazing at it, and so there was always that music going. But early in my jazz, leaning, he was definitely like, what is this music you're playing? Because I mean, it wasn't like Butch Thompson, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it was like, and then I left and moved to New York, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I was away for a long time. And during the time when I came back, he started to come see Happy Apple, and he really got bit by the bug. Yeah. I think Happy Apple is just his sort of like favorite band, and he loves Happy Apple so much. Oh yeah. So he's so there. It speaks to him on some level that I don't know if it speaks to anyone. Honestly, like it speaks to my dad. Yeah, no, I knew he was going to be at the. I knew he was going to be at Art-A-Whirl, and I had him. I brought him. I got him to sign that, and then I had you guys sign the Apple. That's right, the Apple. That was great. Well, you'll have to give him my best. Yeah, he's. I will give him your best, and yeah, he's an absolute art character. I almost want to. I want to do a podcast with him. I mean, I think he's got. Oh man, he's got stories. Fascinating. How would you say your relationship is in the same kind of way with your kids? I mean, are they into the music? Are they musicians at all, or have they, are they fans of this stuff? I suppose that's a complicated scene. I mean, my kids are, I'm very close to them. Yeah. And they're very, very good kids, sweethearts. They really are. They're both, one is 19, my daughter's 19, and my son is 15. And the thing is that my daughter is very creative, and they were obviously they had a lot of music in the house and painting and
Yeah.
all these other things. But my daughter, from the get-go, was very, very interested in science, and she's kind of academic, and not that you are not academic when you're in the world of the arts, but she really, really pushed that button a lot harder. So now she's in her second year at the University of Minnesota, is doing climate science program, a very heavy
Awesome.
environmental science program, and she's doing really well. And so her interests kind of lie there, even though she still paints and does some things like that. She's actually quite good, but she's much more into bio and environmental science, which I think is obviously so important that especially in those generations that are more aware. And then my son is, though, very, very focused in some form of the arts. He leans much more towards filmmaking and photography. That's kind of his thing. Yeah. But he does make some music. He makes electronic music, and he messes with stuff he always has. So, I mean, I've never pushed on any of it other than the only time anyone's expressed interest in the arts, I try to make sure they understand the work ethic that goes along with it. And it demands a lot of, who you are and a lot of your time and a lot of, whatever. So if you go down that road, it's not a road of like, well, I'm just going to be an artist or I'm just going to be a musician. It's more like, that's when the real work begins. And so that's kind of the philosophy I've used. So I don't know where they'll both end up in that zone. I don't know. But
so you gotta,
they're not outright musicians. How about that?
You gotta, it's more important teaching them all the tricks at the airport.
Honestly, I'm so much better at doing the dad is going to tell you how to, make sure that you wash shrimp off, before you with my children, I'm so much more a real human being of practical thinking than I am as a creative person.
Awesome. Love it. Well, I always love seeing them at the Dakota every year, and looking forward to seeing you again. And hey man, no, seriously, thanks for doing this, and I'm always super pumped to catch up with you, and always proud and thankful for what you do, and looking forward to seeing you again. Well, there you have it. A lot of great discussion there with Dave King. We could have gone on, and phone was a little janky there, and we got kind of disconnected at the end. But I think you got the gist of it. I'd love to have Dave come in sometime and do another round of talks. So thank you, Dave King, for joining me here today, and thank you for listening. Dave King has always been one of my favorite Twin Cities musicians, and he's a rare breed of jazz drummers who travel the world and do it for a living, and he's truly one of the best. Thanks for listening to The Prize. This is my podcast, Danny Sigelman, your host here. You can find me on social media, Paper Sleeves, on Twitter and Instagram. And we have a Twitter for the podcast now. We're getting real fancy here, at The Prize MPLS on Twitter. So follow us there. This is a growing enterprise, and there's going to be a lot more great stuff coming up in 2020. I actually had another interview that got canceled on me, so this will be the last one for 2019, and I'm looking to do many more. So my cat just scratched me. Okay, that's good enough. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time here on The Prize.